It's there! Holy moly, this one's gonna go big!
Hello and welcome back to the channel. Well, they say a picture is worth 1,000 words, so a video should be worth about 10,000 words or something like that. So to kick this off, rather than me waffle, I'm going to show you two videos. Here is video number 1. This is from October of last year, and this is an initial proof of concept of translating the emulator, that's MFME, running a fruit machine into 3D rendered reels using some upscaling on the reel symbols themselves to produce what you can see there. And then we'll fast forward until a little bit earlier this month, and that has become this. And now we have an entire arcade of fruit machines that are emulated. You can walk around this arcade and you can play the machines in this arcade. So you can see here, these are all machines that are emulated by MFME. And here they are rendered in 3D with the lights, with the track mode, everything like that. And you can play them in this piece of software here. So you're thinking, okay, well, Degsy, this is a video. Why aren't you playing it yourself? Well, here's the thing. I kind of noticed this when this was originally posted by this guy here, John Parker, last October. And I have been keeping an eye on this thread. It's been running since October last year. And I've been, on several occasions, I've thought about making a video about this. But the thing that I've been holding off on is there's been nothing that we can play for ourselves. John Parker here, he's doing this all by himself in his free time. He's got a full-time job, a tech full-time job. He's been doing this as a hobby in his free time. I will read out his initial post here. I've recently been tinkering with making a 3D machine renderer. I was originally playing with using AI for upscaling low-res textures, then got quite heavily sidetracked. I've been posting in the De-Excellent Layout discussion forum, back when it was just about AI upscale textures, but a friend on here advised this would be a better place to post updates, now that it's turned into a more technical project. Here it is rendering an MFME instance. The flashing sphere above the reels is the first test lamp, the start button lamp in this case. The reel symbol textures in this demo are an example of the AI upscale textures. They were generated from the low-res ones in the layout. So I read that post back in October last year. I have been keeping an eye on this thread, and John Parker has been updating it, and he's been making. Let's just find some more screenshots if we can. So here we are. Here's an early video of him having built some of the machines in the 3D space, but as you can see, there's no emulation going on, there's no lights flashing or anything like that, but he has progressed quite quickly from that. Remember, that was what we started with. He's progressed quite quickly to actually getting 3D models of the machines on the go, but they're not playable, there's no emulation going on at this point. And to give you an idea of what's involved here, he's having to build the cabinets for these 3D layouts from scratch himself in a 3D modeling package called 3ds Max, because of course the emulator itself, they're just flat layouts. It's got no concept of what 3D is. So you can see here we've got kind of diagrams of what the cabs look like. We've got schematics and all that kind of thing. So John Parker here is building these cabs himself so that we can get the 3D models of them into his simulator. And you can see here now he's got the Vogue cabinet, and he's doing a stress test by having multiple copies of Indiana Jones running in his virtual arcade. As you can see, it's a little bit choppy there, and I am cutting out a huge amount of stuff here. This was a huge process of iteration, all being created from the ground up by this one guy. I will link to this thread over at Desert Island Fruits. You can have a look through it for yourself. That there is a massive amount of work that is going into this. You can see here more work going in on getting the alphas looking correct. We've got more work on the lamping, more work on the reels. Huge amount of iteration going on, but at this point there's nothing that we can do for ourselves, and this is why I've held off on this, because we have seen this on the Fruit Machine emulation scene before over the years, that there's been talk about something happening, that, you know, and someone's come forward and said they're working on this, or this is going to be released, and it hasn't happened. And I didn't want to kind of start talking about something on the channel that never came to be, you know, getting people's hopes up for something that was never actually realised. However, towards the back end of June, John Parker did release a very early alpha version of his software that you could download and have a go with for yourself. I didn't try it at this point. He was very upfront about the fact this was alpha, experimental, have a go with it. You're probably going to have all kinds of problems with it, which people did. Have to say, at this point in time, I hadn't tried it myself. I was thinking I'll wait and see how things shake out. And to be honest with you, I only periodically check the thread, and it just popped up to the top of the list. If you go to Desert Island Fruits, you can get these current topics, which just shows you the last few threads that have had an update. And I noticed that the development updates thread had popped up to the top again. So I thought, okay, I haven't checked in for a little while. I'll have another look at it. And John Parker has made a lot of progress going from the end of June through July up to the back end of August, where we are now. The guy has been on a bit of a rampage. And there is a video of this here, which he's uploaded very recently. And I thought, okay, this is looking extremely impressive now. I'm going to download the alpha installer for myself and have a look at it. This was last night. So now we are at the point, let me fire it up. We are now at the point where we have this. And this is kind of what I was waiting for, was the ability for us to easily have something to look at that worked properly. So that if I kind of featured it on the channel and said you can have a go with this by yourself. This is still very early development. John Parker is very clear about this, but he has cleared up a lot of the early bugs and issues and crashes that people were having. So I feel comfortable now to say to you that this is an inner state whereby you can have a go with it, and there's a pretty good chance it's going to work for you. So this is now running on my PC live, or on my laptop rather, and here we are. This is now running in real time on this laptop. It is the virtual arcade that John Parker has built, and we can walk around like so. You can see there, and then what we can do, you stand in front of what machine do we want to play, do you think? What do we fancy? Oh, shall we have a go with big bucks? You see there at the top left-hand corner, it tells you what machine you're looking at. And what you do, you stand in front of the machine, you press enter, and then the machine actually fires up to life in emulated form. And then what you can do, there you are, and it now works like MFME. So I can press up there, or you can press 0 to put a credit in, and there we are. We are now playing an emulated machine in full 3D with 3D reels, 3D lamps. There we are. I'll just put another pound in. There you go. And that's running fine. And then, oh, we're not doing very well there. We've lost our £2. And then once you finish playing the machine, you just press escape. That pulls you away from it. And then you can continue to move around the arcade. And then you can find something else that you want to have a go of. So horrible reflex machine, why not? This is Fiddle of Fortune, isn't it? Yeah, so you press enter, and then I will explain what's going on. I think I've got my head around what it's actually doing. And then the emulation starts like so, and then after a brief pause we can wait. Now I am going to message John Parker over at Desert Island Fruits and ask him if he would be interested in sort of doing an email-y interview type thing and give me some of the information behind this as to how it works. But as I understand it, my kind of layman's understanding of this is that he has built all this in the Unity engine, which is like a 3D engine. And then what he's doing is it's using MFME for the actual emulation itself. So by itself, so let's just put a couple of quid in. There you are. You see there, as you're familiar with MFME, and then there we are, and then we can play off our credits like so, and we can put another pound in, play off our credits like so, and then when we've had enough, you just press escape, and there we are, and we can move around again. So all of this is built in Unity. So remember when I was saying about the cab there? So the Vogue cab, John has had to build that by hand in 3ds Max. It's a pretty good realization of the Vogue cab there. And then he's written all of his own kind of conversion routines to get an MFME layout to render in 3D. And we are talking, remember, we are talking months and months of work here. This is all bespoke stuff that he has had to hook into the emulator. Because remember, the emulator is closed source. The source code for the emulator is not available. Also remember, of course, Chris is no longer with us. So John has had to do this all by himself. And what I believe he's doing is kind of scraping, as it were, the emulator for some kind of outputs and that kind of thing that he can then convert into this 3D rendered environment. So every one of these layouts here has been, you can see there that there are multiple machines repeated here, and that is because every single one of these is a manual process, and each one of them requires a fair amount of work. What you can't do, just to be clear about this, you cannot just kind of get a layout from your current MFME folder and drop it into this. Or you can, there's no import button, so you can, I want to play the Barcrest Games Bond 007. There's no mechanism whereby you can just copy that into this or import into this, and a Games Bond 006, isn't it? A Games Bond 006 won't appear in the arcade here. It's not at that stage. John is very clear about this, that even though he's got an import routine that he's written himself, it's not perfect. It requires manual intervention and manual elements for everything that's involved. So if you download this, you will get exactly the same arcade as me. This is an arcade that John has populated with machines that he has gone through the conversion process for. And also he's limited by the cabs that he's built at the moment here. You can see that we're kind of limited in our cabinets. That is because every single one of these cabinets he has to build by hand, which is limiting us a little bit that we've got. So we've got a Barcrest MPU4 cab. We've got the Eclipse cab, I think that is, a Scorp 4 or Scorp 5 Eclipse cab. And we've got the Vogue cab. That looks like the three. So we see there, those cabs are shared there between the MPU4 club machine and the MPU4 AWP. All of this is a very slow, time-consuming process, and you've just got John working on it by himself. So there's a load of stuff on the to-do list. This is not finished by a long chalk, and absolutely on the to-do list is to start to get more cabinets into the project. I also believe that he's got costs with licensing the software. I think there's even a cost involved with like creating each of the 3D models or something like that. He does have a donations link over at Desert Island Fruits. I have only loaded this up for the first time yesterday, but the next thing on my list, the second I've finished making this video, is I will most certainly be making a donation to John. There's something about seeing this running on your computer that is really quite mind-boggling. I have been, like I said, I've been keeping a periodic eye on the thread over at Desert Island Fruits, and I've been taking a little look at the videos, the update videos that he's been posting, but there's something about seeing this actually running, your own virtual arcade, and knowing that there is real emulation behind it. That's the thing here. You can stand in front of any machine, you just press the enter button, and then the emulation starts, and then you could just put money in and you are playing an emulated machine. There we go. You are playing. See there, we've got proper 3D reels going on. He's been doing work on blended lights. He's also doing some work on reflected lights as well, which are very graphics card heavy at the moment. So there's a lot of stuff that he wants to add in, and it's all had to have been built by hand, because this is just what he... And I want to get some more details from John about how he has managed to kind of parse or interpret what the emulator is doing. Because remember, there is no official support for this. There is no official integration of MFME into what we're seeing here. John has had to work the whole thing out from what MFME kind of publicly announces, as it will, that you can actually pick up from it running on the operating system, because he's got no hooks into the internals of it or into the source code or anything like that. But this, for me, when I fired this up last night, I thought, go on then, I'll have a look at this. I'm sufficiently intrigued now to actually download this and run it. John has recently done a lot of work on the installer itself, so it really is straightforward. I'll put the link in the video description. You download the installer, which is fairly small. The installer then puts a package on your PC. It then goes off to Desert Island Fruits to download the main package, which is quite large. That's about 710 megabytes. And the downloads are being hosted by Desert Island Fruits. So Reg has very kindly agreed to use the Desert Island Fruits backend for the downloads. It's quite slow. Obviously, this is kind of like, this is not some commercial server that's got a huge amount of money behind it. So do be patient with the download. It is a little bit slow, but once that download is finished, you can then fire up the program itself, and you saw there from the, and you will end up at this screen here. You do have, when you go in, if you go into play, you do have a few settings. And there's been a huge amount of work done on this. If you look at even just a couple of months ago, it was very, very crashy and very, very problematic for a lot of people. But John has done a huge amount of work on that. You can see that I've got all the pretties turned on. There's this experimental thing here, which is called machine lights, which I think gives you, it's supposed to give you some extra lights when you're actually playing the machine, or reflected lamps. I can't really see that working for me at the moment, but I think it's supposed to reflect off the side of the cabs there. I could be wrong. But that's where we're at. We have an arcade now that we can sort of actually walk around. And just to look at what it actually puts on your PC, you can't choose the install directory either, so it just does put it in this rather arcane location. And what you've actually got, I was looking through this last night, what you have, can you see there is a copy of MFME embedded into the installation for this, so you don't have to do anything to manually hook MFME into this. It's all part of the installation itself. So within the installation folder for the arcade simulator is that there, and what you actually have is, if I can just find it, yeah, there you are. It is actually just a subfolder of the MFME folder. Can you see there is a folder for each of the layouts that are in the arcade. So you don't have to do anything with your MFME collection or with MFM. I always have a problem saying that, with the emulator itself. It's all in here for you. So that's great. It just works out of the box. You don't have to faff about with anything, but that does sort of emphasize the point I was making, that you can't copy stuff in here. You can't just, all right, I'm going to copy a few machines that I fancy into here. It doesn't work like that, certainly not at the moment. It has to be, everything is a manual process that John has to do, and he is working on adding new things in. So that's essentially, as I understand it, you've got this Unity kind of front end that is rendering the arcades, rendering all those cabinets that John has built by hand, and then when you come up to a machine and press enter, I think what it then does is invokes the emulator behind the scenes and hooks the emulator into the machine that you have chosen to play. So if you look here, for example, at Give Us a Break, because I just played Give Us a Break, can you see there that the RAM and GAM file for Give Us a Break have just been updated in the last few minutes? Whereas if you go to one of the ones that I didn't play, so I don't know, any of the Dons there, can you see there the RAM and the GAM files haven't been updated? So it's I don't know how he's done the attract modes. I really do want to sort of, I'm going to reach out to John at Desert Island Fruits and be interested to see if he'd be interested in doing a proper video presentation of how he's done this. Because obviously you've got all the machines in attract mode, but it's almost like the emulator isn't running for those attract modes. I don't know if he's baked the attract modes into the Unity front end, because that seems to happen without the emulator actually working. Because if the emulation of Box Clever had started, that says to me that the RAM and GAM files should have been updated. I don't know how exactly he's done that. I cannot be explain at this moment. I don't fully understand it, but in essence, that's what you will end up with, is a nice simple install that you just run. And I just put myself a shortcut on my taskbar there, so it really does work just out of the box for me. I was slightly worried that there'd be a load of config and all that kind of thing that I'd have to do, but he's done a really, really good job here of putting together a very friendly installer that does it all for you. Literally just install it, start it, and then you press play and you're in the arcade. I was super impressed at how simple it was. A little bit of a word about what you will need for this. As I understand it, you will need a discrete GPU for this. That means if you have got a laptop or an all-in-one or something like that that only has integrated graphics, that's where your graphics card, as it were, is just integrated into your CPU as a very low power thing. I don't think this will work. However, you will be able to play it on any kind of fairly modern graphics card. It doesn't have to be an absolute powerhouse, is my understanding of it. And now, admittedly, this laptop's got an RTX 2060 in it, and my PC upstairs has got an older GTX 1080 in it. But even, that was a pretty powerful graphics card in its day, and it runs absolutely fine on those. I know some people over at Desert Island Fruits have found that they're having some issues on lower powered hardware, and also you do need a bit of CPU grunt as well. So I believe that you're probably looking at a quad core CPU and some sort of half decent discrete GPU / graphics card to get this running at a decent level of performance. There is an error check in the launcher itself now that if you don't kind of meet the minimum hardware requirements, it will just tell you, I'm sorry, your machine is not up to running this. So do be aware that because we're a fully rendered, fully lit 3D environment here, I mean, to give you an idea, if I, for example, see there, if I just turn the ceiling lights off, can you see there that we've got let me just put the ceiling lights back on. You see there, we're actually getting proper light reflections and all that kind of thing. So you are going to need you can see there that purple light on the ceiling there is being reflected in the cab. So there is a degree of machine grunt required for this, but that's no reason for you not to just download it, try and run it on your machine, and see what happens. I know there are some folks, just having a quick scan through the thread at Desert Island Fruits, some folks have said that they're just not, it's not running for them, and they're like asking, can you recommend me a new graphics card to buy to get this thing going? So there is a slight, as you would expect, entirely reasonably, we are talking about an entirely different proposition here to just running the emulator. We are talking about a fully rendered 3D environment here, and that has resource implications for your hardware as well. So I think that's about where we're up to at the moment. This is, like I say, we are now at the point that we've got something impressive available to download that seems to just work out of the box, which is what I have been waiting for on this project. Ever since I first saw it, I made the decision to just keep my powder dry, see if John ever managed to get to the stage where there was something that everyone could download and have a play with for themselves. And by crikey, I doff my cap to him, because what an amazing job this is for one guy, the dedication that this has taken. And he does make it clear that sometimes he's got IRL stuff going on. So look, I'm going away, or I've got other stuff to do, there won't be any updates for a few days, because this is purely a hobby for him. But he has put a lot of time in over the last 10 months to get us from that very early just demonstration of some 3D reels spinning around to an actual fully rendered 3D arcade that you can walk around and play any of the machines in it. And John makes it very clear that there is a long way to go with this yet. There's a lot of stuff he wants to do. He wants to get more cabinets built. He wants to get more machines in the arcade. You know, this is a very impressive starter for 10, but John himself says, I'm kind of just getting going to an extent. There's a lot more that I want to do with this. So imagine this arcade. God, can you imagine a day when we've got an arcade with, dare we even think about such a thing like most of the DXs? You know, because I mean, obviously it needs version 20.1 of the emulator that it hooks into, so it would have to be a version 20.1 DX. That's still a huge number, though, and I'm not for 1 second kind of underestimating the amount of work that would imply for John himself. But the possibilities for this thing are absolutely mind-boggling. But even with what we have now, I've got to be honest with you, when I didn't quite know what I was expecting when I fired it up last night. But the second I started moving around this arcade on my PC upstairs, stood in front of a machine and started playing it, I was like, oh my God, I am sold on this. This is fucking amazing. So there you are. It's available to download. That's the great news here, folks. This is now available to download, and you can have a go with it for yourself. I would recommend that you do so, and I will, like I say, I'm going to reach out to John at Desert Island Fruits and see if he'd be interested in working with me on getting a video made with some more information about how he's actually managed to achieve this, because I've given you a hugely simplified version here. It's impossible to kind of understate really how much work he's had to put into this to make it happen. So, thank you very much for watching. Do hope you've enjoyed this video, and I will catch up with you next time. And I hope you are finding this potential here, dawn of a whole new era of Fruit Machine. Look at that. It's mind-boggling, isn't it? I hope you're finding this as exciting as I am. So, catch up with you next time, but goodbye.